a neat piece of wood like that. And then the
Good
lake.
afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I watched this 3 o'clock, so we're ringing the bell. Thank you for coming. We're glad to have you here. First of all, please turn off your cell phones. And a big welcome. We're sorry. Really happy to have Len Campanaro back with us today. And no, his shirt is not up for grabs. I'm sorry. Mary and I saw it coming and we said, oh, we like that shirt. So I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to do that probably. Yeah, girl.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. You're probably wondering what you're looking at. I know Molly asked me, and I said, the only thing I'm going to say is in the middle of nowhere. And literally, this is in the middle of nowhere. This side of the picture right here, to orient yourself, you're facing south. Okay, so you're north of this and you're facing south. And this part of the picture right here, where this green is, this is far eastern Russia. The river here in the middle is the Tumen River. This big mountain behind us, that's North Korea. And over here, this is far eastern China. And that's one of the locations we're going to be in today. Literally in the middle of nowhere. And then we're going to head west into Central Asia and head into the Himalayas. And in those 2 locations, today we're going to get familiar with 2 more big cats, Elmore leopards and snow leopards. When we talk about leopards, we've got to identify them. So, which cat am I? Is the top one, the middle one, or the bottom one a leopard? Anybody thinks the top one, raise your hand. You got a couple of hands. How about the middle one? You got about the same number. How about the bottom one? About the same number. So, well, how do you tell spots apart on the 3 cats? Cheetahs have solid black spots. Okay, top picture. Leopards have what's called a broken rosette. It looks like the letter C. It could be forwards, backwards, up, down, okay? And then jaguars have a broken rosette with spots inside it. That's how you tell the 3 of them apart. So now that we know that, the next question is, so why does the tiger have stripes? He didn't want to be spotted. Bad suture. Okay, so
That's not what you're doing.
the kids growing suture. Okay, when we were together last month, I told you that in taxonomy, the family for all modern cats is Felidae. And that there were 2 subfamilies, Feline, which is small cats, and Pantherinae, which are big cats. And that there were 7 species, tigers, lions, jaguars, and then 4 species of leopards. And we're going to talk about 2 of the species of leopards. We're going to talk about snow leopards, Panthera punica, and we're going to talk about who diverge from tigers and Panthera pardos leopards that diverge from lions. So leopards, Panthera pardos, or the word leopard, I should say, is from ancient Greek and Latin, and it means spotted lion. And it's kind of interesting because if you remember, I mentioned that lion cubs are born with spots, and then the spots fade out. And I also mentioned last time we met that the Panthera pardos leopards have diverged from lions 2 to 2.5 million years ago. They said lions have the biggest range of any species on Earth other than human beings, historically, roaming from Africa, Asia, Europe, and into North America. Well, in modern times, as far as wild cats are concerned, the leopard, Panthera pardos, have the widest range. It would be the pink areas including the dark brown areas on the map that you see there. So stretching from far western Africa and southern Africa, across India, the Middle East, and over towards Southeast Asia and into Korea. In modern times, though, or I should say the current range, though, is quite fragmented. And it's really that reddish-brown area that you see on the map. They're scattered over some 70 countries. It's a very versatile cat in the environment it can live in. It could be rainforest, or it could be arid, out towards semi-desert areas, and even into quite cold climates. They'll survive at sea level and as high as 14,000 feet. And generally, leopards are not as well studied as other cats. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature classifies them anywhere from least concern to critically endangered for the different subspecies of Panthera pardoceros. And I told you previously that they have 8, and we're going to see those in a moment. In general, depending on the subspecies, their weight varies from about 50 pounds to roughly 200 pounds. The Persian subspecies in the top picture there, they're the biggest. They get to about 200 pounds. And the Arabian subspecies is the smallest. They average about 55. And across all the subspecies, the males are bigger than the females, okay, by about 30%. The spots are unique to each cat. Generally, they are nocturnal, except I'm going to talk about an exception, of course. When it comes to teeth, their canines have a sharp posterior edge with a gap behind the tooth there for slashing into the prey when you're attacking. And because they're using those quite heavily, that canine has a really deep root. In fact, half the tooth is down inside of the gum line. So there are 8 subspecies. The African, the IUCN classifies them as least concern. Then we have Indian, which are near threatened, Sri Lankan, which is vulnerable, which is getting close to being endangered. Then you have the Javan and the Persian, which are both endangered. And then along the bottom, we have the Arabian, Indo-Chinese, and Amur leopards, which are critically endangered. And that's where we're going to focus. The most critically endangered of them all, the Amur leopard, rarest cat in the world. There's only about 100 of these left alive in the wild. And they come from basically an isolated pocket in far eastern Asia. We're going to see that in a moment. There's roughly about 200 of these in zoos across the world, about 70 in the U.S. We have 2 here in St. Louis. They're both 6 years old. Samson, the male, and Dorothy, the female. And they had their first litter about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, maybe 2 and a half. They had 2 females, and they have since now gone to another zoo. In fact, the second one just left. So their habitat is greatly diminished. That orange area you're looking at, where this should be recognizable as North and South Korea. Here you've got eastern China, and here that far eastern Russia. The picture of the area that I gave you at the beginning, it's right down here at the tip of this little sort of blue football area. So the orange area was the historic range. Their present range is that little blue area, and it's only about 1,000 square miles. And the main river through that region, that yellow line cutting down through, is the Amur River, and that divides China from Russia. And because they've lost so much habitat, they really can't roam as they normally would. And a problem that humans have created for them, besides poaching them almost to extinction, is that in that small isolated pocket, there's a lot of inbreeding, so the genetics are very weak. And I'll come back to that later in a few more slides. So these cats, they like to live in mountain forests and river valleys where they can find abundant prey. To give you an idea what that looks like, since most of them are over on the Russian side, in an area called Primoria, which is just north of North Korea, I wanted to give you 2 pictures of what that terrain looks like. So literally, as I was saying to Vi, in the middle of nowhere. Their fur tends to be thicker and longer, which makes a lot of sense because they live in a colder environment than maybe an African leopard would, or an Indian leopard. So you've got that longer, thicker fur. The color is paler. And that's because the forest is a bit more open than you might find in jungle forest. The rosettes tend to be larger and more widely spaced, all having to do with the type of vegetation, so that it better blends into the shadows in that area. A rounder face. This cat will weigh about 110 to 135 for a male. Female is a little bit less. Body length about 4.5 feet, plus a 3-foot-long tail. Now, amongst the Panthera pardos leopards, it's the longest tail. And in part because they'll use their tail not only for balance, on cold night, you're going to use that and wrap it around you somewhat like a muff. Okay? They're strong climbers, being in mountains, and they have to be great swimmers. Typically, the cats that like water are tigers and jaguars. But these cats have to like water and be good at it because where they are, there are a lot of tributaries to that Alamo River that they have to deal with. They tend to be active when the prey is active. And for them, they tend to be more diurnal, active in the daytime or dawn and dusk than at night. A couple slides ago, I said leopards are mainly active at night, and here's our exception. They run about as fast as a lion or a tiger, about 35 miles an hour. They can do a straight-up vertical jump of 10 feet. You remember I told you that tigers can do 20 feet straight up. They can do a horizontal jump of 20 feet, where a tiger is 32 feet. Solitary, except when mating and with the young. When you see cubs playing, whether it's at the zoo or you see videos in the wild, that play is actually practicing their skills for hunting. Sneaking up on mom, they're going to eventually have to sneak up on prey. Pouncing on mom's back or pouncing on a sibling, they're eventually going to have to pounce on prey to survive. And that's what they're doing. All that play and rough and tumble is all practice to survive. The leopards are territorial, like the tigers and lions. Their territory will range depending on prey density between 10 and more than 100 square miles. And they'll scent mark. They're going to scent mark with their urine, with their feces, with their cheeks. They'll rub their cheeks on trees and rocks. If you go to the zoo, you might see the leopard raise its tail up and turn around and spray a tree. And what they're doing is they're scent marking their territory. They'll also put claw marks in trees. And then what they'll do is, because the scent is going to fade over time, is a couple of times a week, they're going to roam the perimeter of their territory and remark everything. So everybody else knows it's their territory. Now when it comes to hunting, they have to get in close. They have to get in close because a lot of the prey that they're going after runs about as fast as they do. So they're going to stalk very stealthily over long distances, crouching close to the ground, keeping their eyes and ears focused. And they're going to get in within about 5 yards because they don't have a lot more speed, so they have to make that fast start to catch up to their prey. When I talk later on in the coming series, and probably go into next year when I get to this one, I'll be talking about cheetahs. Cheetahs, on the other hand, run twice as fast as what they're chasing. They only have to get it within 50 yards because they'll eventually overtake whatever they're going after. But these cats, they need to get within 5 yards. It's similar towards for a lion and a tiger. Have to do something very similar. For the leopard, when they do catch their prey, they're going to kill and then drag it either into the bush or up a tree. Typically, they want to get up a tree where other possible predators and carnivores can't easily get to it. And they're going to keep that prey for a couple of days if it's sizable, to eat as much as they possibly can. Because their success rate for hunting is only about 38% of the time. Okay? Now, if you remember when I talked to you about lions and tigers, their stats are like 20 and 30%. Okay? Polar bears are only 2%. Okay, so 38% is pretty good. Their diet looks like the animals we have in this picture. Sitka and roe deer up on the top of the center there. The Astori wild boar over to the far right. Yellow-throated marten here on the lower left. I can give you a picture of the elk. It's going to look like most elk. Though they will go after bear cubs, not bears. They're full-grown bears because they're not big enough. But they will go after bear cubs. Onward badger is another animal. And they go after various birds and rodents and even hares and rabbits. Now, when it comes to vocalizing, as I mentioned to you, big cats can roar, little cats can't. But leopards are most famously known for a vocalization they call a saw. And it literally sounds like somebody with a handsaw sawing on a piece of wood. And it is loud. I can't do a good imitation, but I'll try. And it's really loud and longer and deeper. And it's a very, very distinctive call. Again, if you go to the zoo, sometimes you'll hear Samson do it. He doesn't do it a lot. I have heard other leopards do it much more. But you'll hear that. It's a very distinctive call. And he's just telling everybody, this is my territory to stay out. Females tend to be quieter. So, like the tiger, sound that will make a sort of a chuff, which is friendly encounters, maybe during courtship time, the male and the female, to show that there's no competitive intent at that time. Aggression will be growl, snarl, hisses, as you would imagine. And then the other thing is mothers will do a soft grunt when she has cubs. And, I've been around Onward leopards for 3 different litters. And the female is always extremely quiet, except when she has cubs. And she's constantly talking to them about, get back over here, don't go too far. And it was extremely noticeable to me, as being an interpreter with leopards and seeing that, how much mom, just like a human mom, telling its child, get back over here and I'll straight you far. When it comes to courtship, the female has to get things going. And what she's going to do is scent mark that, and understand that she's an estrus. She's going to be spraying trees, rubbing her cheek on everything she can possibly find. The male comes along and picks up on it. She's literally going to making eyes at him. And I've seen this. And she'll roll around on her back, something you don't see except when she's in courtship, saying that she's willing and ready and wants to breed and so forth. These cats only breed once a year. If you're a cat that lives in a warm climate, if you were an African leopard, you would breed year-round. But animals that tend to live in a cold environment usually just breed once a year that the female will go on estrus. And will be in the winter time, so typically that when the young is born, it's a time when they've got maximum time to grow and put weight on and be prepared for the next winter, and best time for when there's going to be available prey to eat, to survive off of. Litter, usually 1 or 2. They're quite small when they're born, only 1 to 2 pounds. Weaned at about 90 days. At that point, mom starts teaching them how to hunt. Survival rate isn't very high. Mortality is about half of them die by the time they're a year old. Could be killed by another leopard. Or they just, fall victim to an accident of some sort where there's not enough food. By the time they're 18 to 24 months, they are independent mom. And mom usually makes a decision, like a tiger. I think I talked to you about that. Mom's going to chase them off when she thinks they're ready to go. Sexual maturity occurs at about 2 to 3 years of age. Females tend to be a little bit faster than the males. The first time I saw courtship by a male and a female, and it was kind of funny because they were both young, and they were about 2.5 years old at the time. They were the same age, and she knew what she wanted, and she's basically meowing at him and flirting with him, everything she could possibly do. And he's looking at her like, this is unusual behavior, and he's backing away from her, and he's growling at her and running away from her. And he was dumb as a doornail. He did not know what to do. It wasn't until the second season when she did it again, he kind of figured out what he was supposed to do. So they didn't breed that first season. It took him an extra season to figure it out. For that particular couple, one of their cubs came here, that's Dorothy. And the couple I'm mentioning was at the San Diego Zoo, and their offspring is Dorothy, and she wound up here. Life in the wild is really short. It's only 8 to 10 years, so you better get going early in life to breed. In managed care, they can make it to about 15 years. They are very important. They are a top-notch predator because there is another animal that's bigger than they are, and that's that Almor tiger. It's about 4 to 5 times bigger than the Almor leopard. The male Almor tiger can to about 700 pounds. And as I mentioned to you before, I did a slide last month when I was with you about maintaining healthy ecosystems. So this cat is very important to maintaining a healthy ecosystem where it is. And if you see the cat thriving, then you know other wildlife in the region is thriving as well. Their main issue are people. People simply poaching them as trophies, as you can see in the upper picture there. They run into habitat loss from development projects, farming, mining, logging. A lot of times the logging is illegal logging, and from climate change or forest fires becoming more frequent. As I mentioned before, one of their problems, because we've taken so much ground, is inbreeding. So they will go extinct if something isn't done to step in and improve the genetics in the wild. They do have some natural predators, the Almor tiger, gray wolves that might attack them in a pack, or does that might attack them in a pack since they're solitary. But one-on-one, they'll be fine other than with that tiger. There is hope with all our help. The St. Louis Zoo got together with a number of other zoos in North America and Europe to embark on a reintroduction project to put cats with better genetics back into the wild so that they don't go extinct. They joined with the Almor Leopard and Tiger Alliance, and they went to the Chinese government, said that the Chinese, because they were almost completely gone in China, did they want them back in their country, and the Chinese did. Well, when zoos put animals back in the wild, they just won't send them willy-nilly out there to their deaths. They want a protected environment for them. They want a reserve of some sort. So the Chinese agreed, and about 6 years ago established a reserve that's 3 times the size of Yellowstone. So since then, it was off to the races and breed. And it's a 25-year project. The idea is to get the populations in the zoos up, and then eventually, several generations down, the cats that are being bred and born, you will not see on exhibit in the zoo. They will be kept completely behind the scenes with very limited human contact, so that they don't get used to humans. Because if they get used to the humans, they'll approach us, and that's what gets them killed. And we put them into an environment where they have to learn how to hunt on their own, and once they've proven that, they can then be reintroduced. So like I said, this is about a 25-year project. Zoos have been doing this kind of thing, started in the late 1950s, and they have a lot of experience in how to do it well. The Amur Leopard and Tiger Alliance, besides helping with this, helps facilitate cross-border collaboration between the countries involved, working also with non-governmental organizations from the West in doing research, doing education, planning, staffing, and poaching patrols as well. So we're involved in this, so please support our zoo. A couple of fun facts about the Amur leopard. Their fur, in wintertime, and even longer fur, grows out 3 times the length it is in the summer. They can camouflage so well up a tree that the only way they are often detected is that their tail is twitching. The cubs, they're born blind, so mom must hide them for 6 to 8 weeks, okay, so they can see well and navigate well. And then the female will spend half her adult life raising cubs. Okay, heading west into Central Asia, to the Himalayan mountains. And there we're going to meet the ghost cat of the Himalayas, the snow leopard, Panthera onca. And these diverge from tigers. The habitat are literally the mountains of Central Asia. Population, nobody knows for sure. It's estimated as being someplace between 4,000 and 6,500, with 60% of that population living here in China. And so you've got China, a little bit of northern India, you may find them, Nepal, Bhutan, Mongolia, and then you'll find them in all the stand countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and so forth. They stick to the slopes, usually below the permanent snow line. In summertime, you'll find them up as high as 18,000 feet. So that's 3 times Denver. Now, this is kind of smaller than the Amur. Males only about 100 pounds versus 135. Females about 10% lighter. They've got a shorter body length, 4 foot versus the 4.5, but their tail is longer. Remember I said the other cat had a 3 foot long tail. Okay, that was the longest of the Panthera. This one has a 40-inch tail, much colder environment. And notice how thick that tail is. It's just not fur in that thickness. The body of the tail itself is thick, and that's to keep it from freezing in the wintertime. And they'll curl up in the wintertime and wrap that all around them, including covering over their face, because they just don't have a lot of hair and fur on their face to keep their face and muzzle warm. The fur tends to be much thicker than other leopards. That smoky gray color that you see here, imagine these rocks as all gray without the white snow. And that smoky gray color gives them excellent camouflage against the gray rocks in the summertime. And there's coloration will fade come wintertime so that they blend better into the snow background as well. The limbs tend to be stocky, reduce heat loss. Their paws are wider and fur covered so they don't sink down into the snow and the fur, their feet stay warm. They do have long hind limbs, and that's for leaping. Okay? You're climbing around the mountain, so you better be able to leap very well. The snout tends to be shorter than other leopards. The ears are rounded, and it's all to reduce heat loss. And they have large nasal cavities, and that is to warm the air before it hits their lungs. Now, unlike the other large cats, this one can't roar because of the shape of the larynx. But to show aggression, like the Amur leopard, they growl, snarl, and hiss, but they also spit to show aggression. They do the chuff, the greeting, just like the Amur leopard and the tiger, and they'll do a mew sound. Now, they scent mark not to claim territory. They're not territorial animals. They scent mark to say, stay out of my way. I'm in this area, just to let you know, you might want to go a different way. Because we're both not going to find enough food in this area. And they also scent mark for breeding. And the females and esters will be their scent. range, and it varies based on prey density, anywhere between 5 square miles and more than 100 square miles. They too are solitary except for mating and the female taking care of the young. Male leopards are not involved at all in taking care of young, no matter what species or subspecies you are. They're mostly active at dawn and dusk for their hunting, and they're extremely secretive. In fact, for a long time, these cats weren't studied at all because not only couldn't the scientists find them, but locals had trouble finding them. They camouflage so well where they are. They'll eat anything they find. And to give you some idea, they'll go after wild mountain sheep and goats that are 3-4 times their size. The upper right picture is a Himalayan tar. Marmots, which is sort of a groundhog type animal. The markhor over in the lower right. Various rodents, rabbits, that sort of thing. And when they can't find that, because oftentimes they have problems that hunters have taken a lot of what they would normally eat, they wind up getting themselves in trouble and going into the lower elevations and raiding the farm for domestic livestock. And when they're extremely desperate, they're known to survive simply on grass and twigs, something that other cats can't do. They prefer to hunt from above, circle the prey, get above, and then come down quickly at the prey. They'll use that broken terrain for camouflage, and they blend very well into the shadows that the mountains and rocks create. Remember I said a tiger leaps 32 feet? This cat, likewise, relative to a tiger, can leap over 30 feet. They can chase for a long distance, okay? Lions and tigers, leopards, African leopards don't chase over a long distance. These guys can go over 300 yards. Like the other leopards, they're going to kill by biting the neck. Once they make a kill, they're going to stay with that carcass until they're literally down to the bone. So they're going to consume everything. It's just not a once eat and then move on or bury it like other animals will do. They will just simply stay with that carcass to consume it. They too only breed once a year. It's going to be in the winter time, the January to March time frame. It's usually 3 to 6 days that the female is in estrus. Gestation, again, about 100 days. That compares to the tiger at about 105 days. Cubs are born in the spring. Best time of year, food, and next time to beef up for the following winter. She's usually going to give birth if she can find a mountain cave, if not crevices under a rock. Litter is usually 2 to 3. And when they're born, they don't have the rosettes yet. It's just simply black spots, and as they grow, it forms into those broken rosettes, which we see. And like the animal leopards, they're born blind. Cubs will exit their den at about 2 to 4 months of age. Picture up there, the upper one of a young cub coming out. They're independent of mom by the time they're 18 months, a little bit faster than the animal leopard. And at that point, they're just going to disperse and go off on their own, eventually finding a mate. Life is a little bit longer, 10 to 13 years, and managed care about 22. Right now we have one snow leopard at the zoo. Her name is Bougie, and she's about 16 years old, so she's up there in age. They are the top natural predator in their region. And again, they're there keeping the prey population in balance so that we have a healthy ecosystem. So again, if they're thriving, so are the animals in this region. Humans are their sole predator. The IUCN, International Union for the Conservation of Nature, classifies them as vulnerable, which is only one step from being classified as endangered. The population is declining. They're poached for the fur trade, beautiful fur, and for the bones, which is sold as fake medicines. Their bones, our bones, same material, doesn't cure anything. As I've said before, plants cure things, not animal body parts. They've lost habitat as there's more development in the lower levels of the mountains where they are, and mining in the mountains. And then also affected by climate change. And then, as I said before, they get themselves in trouble by raiding livestock when they can't find food. So the herders go out and hunt them down to kill them. But there's hope with all of our help. One of the key things that started probably about 10 years or so ago is the Snow Leopard Trust. It operates in China, India, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, and Mongolia. And what they've done is they've gone out to the villages and have said to the villagers, look, if a snow leopard should kill one of your goats or sheep, rather than going and killing the leopard, you come to us and we'll pay you for that sheep. Because for them, a sheep or a goat is equivalent to basically a month's wages. So they don't want to lose anymore. And they said, also as an incentive, we'll teach you better animal husbandry practices so you'll have healthier flocks and you don't lose them to diseases easily. And the hand goods that your village makes, we'll market those for you at zoos in Europe and North America and give you those profits from that. In the countries, the 4 countries where this program was established, they have no retribution killings. It's self-policing because the way it works is peer pressure in the local community. If anybody in the community breaks the trust, the whole community loses the program. So it's peer pressure. Just keep that in. And as part of it is also is you're not going to house hunters to go into the mountains to hunt these animals later. So it's been an extremely successful program. Funding comes from contributions from accredited zoos like the St. Louis Zoo. Then there's also the Global Snow Leopard and Ecosystem Protection Program. And this is 13 nations in the area of the map that I showed you before. And basically, they came up with strategies to create 20 protected zones to protect these animals and allow, on the fringes and not go into these zones, development out to the fringes of those areas so that these animals have adequate space and adequate prey to hopefully protect them so that they do survive. So there is hope for these animals, and hopefully we'll see them downlisted rather than being listed as endangered. If you were thinking about the snow leopard and its family tree, a snow leopard is a sister, think about it as a sister to a tiger, but only a cousin to all the other leopards. If you're trying to eventually visualize how that will happen. Sister to a tiger, cousin to all the other leopards. Now, while a tiger will readily eat you, snow leopards have no history of going after people. So if you lived in the foothills of the Himalayas, and in the morning went out with nothing more than your staff to tend your herd of goats and sheep, you'd be perfectly safe from the snow leopard. Okay, it's not your size that they're afraid of. Okay, because as I said before, they'll take down a wild mountain goat that's 3 or 4 times their size. Just for some reason, they don't go after people. I've told this a number of times at the zoo, and I've had a couple of people say to me, it must be because we don't taste good to them. So, anyhow. So that's snow leopards. Now, I didn't advertise this in advance, but I wanted to do something else I often get asked, probably at least each time I'm at the zoo. Where do the animals in our zoo come from? Do you ever think about that question? Where do they come from? A lot of people think zoos, accredited zoos, still go out to Africa and the wilds and capture the animals and bring them back. And it's changed a lot over the last number of decades now. 99% of the animals in an AZA zoo, like St. Louis, were born in another AZA zoo someplace. The other 1% are rescues. So in the case of pair of Onward cubs born here, but Cully, the polar bear at the zoo, is a rescue. His mother was killed in the North Slopes of Alaska. Polar bears need their moms for 2.5 years to survive in the wild. And luckily, they found the cub, and because the St. Louis Zoo does research work in this particular region of northwestern Alaska, the local inhabitants of the area knew the St. Louis Zoo, and that's how that cub came to come to the St. Louis Zoo, was because of their trust in the zoo. So he was arrested. Now, if all these animals are coming from another zoo, 99% of the animals are coming from another zoo, you got to be concerned with genetics. Well, there's basically a program, it's like zoomatch.com, and it's called the Species Survival Plan. Scientists control this, different scientists for each animal, and they track the bloodlines and relationships of each individual animal. The objective is to have at least a 90% genetic diversity factor for each species that's in the program. For most of them, the diversity factor is in the high 90th percentile, so like 97, 98, 99%. And oftentimes, the animals in this program, because there are endangered species, the genetics in the accredited zoos are better than the genetics in the wild, because the issue I just mentioned to you about the alma leopard occurs with many species around the world. So as of 2023, there were a little over 300 species in this program. So not only does it keep the zoos, the accredited zoos with healthy populations, they work sort of like an arc so that we don't lose these species completely off the face of the earth. But then it also provides some seed stock for reintroduction into the wild. And I gave you a couple of examples here. In the upper right-hand corner is the golden lion tamarin. It's a monkey species from Brazil that's in this program. We used to have them here at St. Louis, but we don't have them currently. But they've been placed back into Brazil. The California condor program started out at the San Diego Zoo, and now about 5 other zoos participating, and we'll talk about that in a future presentation. Here in St. Louis, there's a couple of programs that are going on, and I've just picked out 2 of them to give you an example. The red wolf, southeastern part of the United States, almost gone extinct, but at the Sears Lehman Conservation Center, which belongs to the St. Louis Zoo, it's, I don't know my Missouri towns very well, but it's west of here, towards the center of the state in a rather remote area, is a breeding facility, so that perhaps someday they might be reintroduced into part of their habitats. The American burying beetle, very important to getting nutrients down into the soil, being reintroduced into southern Missouri by the St. Louis Zoo. Just some different species to give you an idea of. And there'll be others that I'll talk about in future presentations. But just besides breeding the animals, you have to do it in a responsible manner. So the SSP may tell the St. Louis Zoo that, okay, Samson and Dot can breed again, have another litter, okay? Because they're going to watch also, the SSP is going to watch to make sure we don't have too much in one particular bloodline, okay, and you get skewing there. So the SSP may say to St. Louis, okay, this winter, since Dot doesn't have her young anymore, she's got to go back in nesters, they can breed again. I haven't heard that. This is hypothetical. Before the zoo does that, they have to demonstrate financial ability to take care of that animal for the rest of its life. Okay, for the St. Louis Zoo, it's not a problem. Smaller zoos, it may be a problem. Because what ultimately happened is we saw with the 2 cubs that Samson and Dorothy just had, they went to other zoos for breeding. But if something should happen to those other zoos that for some reason they went out of business, the zoo where the animal was originally born, Irina was originally born here, she's the St. Louis Zoo's responsibility, okay? So she's not sold to the other zoo, she's just given to them one loan. But the St. Louis Zoo ultimately is responsible for her for the rest of her life. And then the other thing is you've got to have a good contraception program. Some animals, they don't come together except breeding, so it's easy to keep them apart. Other animals that both male and female live together, you have to have some type of contraception program in place that works so that you're not having uncontrolled breeding. So, put a couple slides up of animals that we're going to be finding at the St. Louis Zoo Wild Care Park in the northern part of the county come 2027. Right now, there are about 24 animals out there. There are addicts out there, there's Grevy zebra, there's bantank, and there's also, so far, one Somali wild ass. All the animals on the screen are endangered or critically endangered. And they're going to be animals that will be bred at the park. Ultimately, they'll have about 250 animals by the time the park opens in 2027, and they're going to be coming from other AZA Zoo facilities. And that's how we're going to get that facility staffed up. Eventually, there'll be more than just the 250. But the objective is when the park opens in 2027, they'll have 250 species. Now, the park will be free to St. Louis County residents. And when you get out to the park, you'll get on a transit, and they're going to take you out on safari. There'll be 2 safaris, and if you're a county resident, they're free to go. Okay? And one is going to be woodland safari, and the focal point is going to be southern white rhino. Southern white rhino. Now, you may have seen the rhino at the zoo here. We have black rhino here. Black rhino are smaller, 3,500, 4,000 pounds. Southern white rhino males can be 6,000, 6,500, so much bigger. They like to live in herds. Black rhino like to live solely. Okay, solitary. So we don't have enough room at the zoo. So they'll be able to go there. So there will be different species than you see at the St. Louis Zoo, and there also will be some of the same type of species, but to give you an idea. And then there'll be a savanna safari that you would also be able to go out to. So I wanted to make mention of that, show you a little bit of this, of what's coming down the road in a couple of years, and it's available for you to get out to and enjoy it at cost. So we talked about where do zoos get their animals from. The other question is what happens when an animal dies. Well, I haven't gotten the orientation yet on this at the St. Louis Zoo, so I'm going to talk about the San Diego Zoo. But I would imagine, since they're both AZA zoos, the protocols are probably very similar. So, when an animal dies, depending on the species, there's going to be time to mourn. I mean, elephants are very close knit. They cry when one of the members of their herd dies. Okay? So you're going to give them time to mourn. Then they're going to do a necropsy. It's the equivalent of a human autopsy. You want to know why the animal died. Even if it's a non-collection animal, it's a wild duck that landed at the zoo and died on zoo grounds. Why do you want to know? Maybe they've got a bird disease that could be contagious, not just for zoo animals, but for animals who are farmers in the area. Okay? So it's something that you would want to be made known to the public. So you're going to do a necropsy. You want to understand exactly why each animal died. And then you're going to save tissues. Okay, you save tissues, so one, you got a record, and 2, research gets often done. Zoos get requests for scientists working out of universities and other research facilities that are studying certain issues affecting animals. That if they have an animal they're looking for some type of certain tissues. The San Diego Zoo has the largest collection of tissue samples of animals in the world. They started collecting tissues in the 1940s. In the early days, it was all under slide. In the 1970s, they started preserving things cryogenically, and they have a facility that they call the Frozen Zoo. And then after they've done the tissue samples, then the remains of the animals are put into an enzyme bath, which reduces down the remains just like cremation would, except you don't have the air pollution. So that's what happens with when the animal dies, then those remains are secretly buried. So that concludes my talk for today. I'm just watching the time, what we're going to do. No, we still got a few minutes left. So any time for question, a little bit of time for questions. Do you have any questions about the cats or anything else to talk about? Any questions today? Yes, ma'am.
We spent 30 days in Alaska, or in Africa in 2008, and got to 3 safaris, one in South Africa and 2 in Botswana, and saw leopards quite often. And most of that time, they were up in trees eating.
Yes. You're right, but if you went back now, you'd see less leopards. That's one regrettable thing. But no, you're right. They like to be up in trees where lions can't readily get them, where hyenas can't readily get at them. So they're the 2 things that they worry about. Yes, sir.
That park that's going to be opened up in North County.
Yes.
How big? How are you going to fence those animals in?
Yes.
Is the fence going to go all the way around the park? How
Absolutely.
long is that fence going to be, and how high is that thing going to be?
It's like 8 to 10 feet. It's double fenced. When you put animals in a facility, back in the early days when they did zoos, the whole thing was make a deep moat, dig a deep moat, put up a tall wall, and you really didn't know much about the animal behavior. And a lot of times the animals got out. And the zoo understands, in modern times, the zoo understands animal behavior and what type of barrier you need for the type of animals. So the animals that are going there right now, there aren't going to be any carnivores, okay? So at least for the first 5 years that opens, all that's simply going to be are basically ungulates, hoofed animals, mainly grazers. The only carnivores up there are going to be bobcats that are not native to the area, fox, coyote. So it also went into their thinking the species of wildlife that are going to be part of the collection at the park have to be hardy, that bobcats and coyotes aren't going to bother them. And basically the view of the curator is that if a bobcat or coyote gets in with the animals, they're only going to do it one time, because they're not going to like running into a zebra or a giraffe or a Somali wild ass. Animals know how to protect themselves against lions. They can take care of that. But you don't have to worry about some carnivore getting loose in the St. Louis area. That's not going to be there. And it's double fenced. There's 24-hour security, and some areas will even be triple fenced. So most of the problem is making sure people stay out rather than keeping the animals in. Yes, sir. Yes, Ken.
How about the collections for circus animals or pet animals? Is that regulated to any extent?
Yeah, collections for circus animals definitely are regulated, but I know nothing about it.
Neither do I.
Other questions?
What's your project?
Yeah, on the bloodlines you talked about, on animals on a farm like cattle, there's registered cattle, and there's a stack of paperwork about their ancestry. Who takes care of that with the zoo animals?
The scientists that I mentioned, oftentimes they are scientists who work for the zoos who are experts in their area. Like the St. Louis Zoo controls the stud book for a number of animals, but Grevy zebras is one of them. And they tell all the other zoos in North America that have Grevy zebras who could breed with whom. They've tracked the bloodlines and the lineage of all of that. It's extremely well documented. You've got a lot of paperwork because it takes a lot of paperwork to move animals around, and sometimes you've got animal moves, usually hoofstock not, but like carnivores, you would have animal moves between countries. And it takes a heck of a lot of paperwork. I would probably say what you have on a farm is nothing compared to what they've got for a zoo. Yes, ma'am.
Is the St. Louis Zoo, with its great reputation, why don't you get pandas?
I guess the short answer is it's political. You know, I think that's it. You know, the zoos, the 5 zoos that had them in North America lost them at the end of the contracts because politics went in the wrong direction between the United States and China. So they weren't renewing contracts. And now they've finally brought it back. And I just read an article about a little over a week ago that the Chinese are now looking at this as a money-making opportunity. There's over 700 pandas, giant pandas in zoos around the world. The Chinese get a little over $1 million a panda per year as rent. So it's basically they're getting $1 billion of income off of having these animals out there. So it's commercial as well now. So they've moved from completely political to a little bit more economics. And as more, I think the other issue was more zoos have them. You don't have lots and lots of people flocking to that 1 or 2 zoos that happen to have them. This goes back a couple of weeks now. There was a zoo in Finland that had them. They couldn't afford them because they couldn't afford to be paying the Chinese what they had to pay them every year. They gave them back to the Chinese. So the Washington Zoo just got them back. San Francisco was supposed to get them for the first time. Even when you get them, it's a very expensive undertaking. With the facility that you have for them, it's a much more complex facility. It's required by regulation, much more complex facility than you have for other animals. You have to be able to grow a number of different types of bamboo. Pandas are picky. While there's 1,200 kinds of bamboo, they only like, I don't know, maybe 30, 35. And you need to be able to grow a lot of it and do it year-round because some species of bamboo dies out all at one time. So it's not as easy as having, you know, Grevy zebra or having, you know, some giraffes. It's quite complex. So, but you know, I've never heard our zoo talk about it. This is just from my experience elsewhere. Yes,
I have a question.
Sure.
What might we look forward to learning about from you next? What species?
He's on the calendar.
2.5 weeks, we're going to be talking about pandas. We're going to be talking about red pandas, which we do have at the St. Louis Zoo, and they're actually the original panda species. They came first. And then we're going to have giant pandas, and they are not related. And I'll have to come to that meeting to find out how they both happen to have the same name. Yes, ma'am.
The Knoxville Zoo in Tennessee have red pandas and are in a breeding program for supplying them.
Yeah, red pandas aren't controlled the way giant pandas are. Yeah, they're not controlled the way giant pandas are. So, I think that's about I'll get there just a second. There's the only other place where I've seen tough controls about getting animals from someplace is Australia, particularly koalas, Tasmanian devils, platypus, echidna, and so forth. In fact, the first koalas that got out of Australia went to the San Diego Zoo, and it actually took an act of parliament to approve their release. So, but other animals typically don't have that issue. Yes, sir, in the back. Or ma'am, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Our son is a curator at the zoo in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and they have bred the red pandas, and they're just getting ready to send the second litter off to other zoos, and they're very careful about how they manage them.
Absolutely. They're really beautiful cubs. I'll have pictures next time.
Let's have a big.
Okay. You're welcome. Thank you. Yes, and happy Halloween in the meantime.